It is evidently clear that one cannot speak of the fight against the effects of climate change without speaking of energy transition in the adaptation of renewable energy. Have you heard of energy transition? Do you know that as an individual, you have quite a huge role to play in this process? Well, it's time to dive in once again as we are about to learn yet another aspect of climate change. This program highlights the status, success, setbacks, as well as the possible way forwards regarding energy transition in the United Republic of Tanzania, as it features experts as well as individuals who have already embarked on the transition journey. I am Eva Lilian Masawe. Let's dive in. Dr. Rukonge Sospita Muhongo is a professional researcher based in Tanzania. He is specialized in climate change issues, including the extractive industry and energy transition. He is also a visiting scholar at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland and a visiting lecturer at Eduardo Mondlane University in Maputo, Mozambique. He joins the program to take us through the energy transition discussion from an expertise point of view, and he begins by briefly explaining what it actually is.
In essence, the energy transition is the global shift from using conservative or let's say dirty sources of energy, particularly fossil fuels, to cleaner sources of energy, namely renewable energy. And this renewable energy comes from what? It comes from wind, from solar, biomass, geothermal. And the energy transition does not only entail moving from this type of fossil fuels to cleaner fuels, it also depends on how we produce our fuel, how we consume our energy, as well as how we move the energy from like transmission from one area to another, like using the grids, etc. So energy transition is just a global shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. But you have to understand, we got to the energy transition because of industrialization and the climate and the environment all being in a very bad state that it is right now.
Why is energy transition so important in the fight against climate change?
Socially, energy transition is very important because it affects our way of life. If you go to countries in West Africa, West and Central Africa, you have, let's say, without the energy transition, then you don't have energy security, you don't have water security, you don't have food security. So in countries like Chad, Niger, you have things called water wars, where neighboring communities are fighting over water bodies because it is heating up. So the ground is drying up. You don't have a lot of, you have rising sea levels, So even the rainfalls, the rainy seasons, the patterns have changed, all because of climate change. So that creates food insecurity in a region like Africa. That we do not have massive equipment to store our food. Between the seasons, we don't have a lot of technology or a lot of massive greenhouses to create some sort of security and constant flow of food during the seasons. So socially, it is very important because energy transition creates stability and it creates a certain type of sustainability between us. Then economically, the energy transition creates opportunity. It creates opportunity, as you can see, electric vehicles are becoming more common. That is a new type of product that's brought into the automotive industry. You have a lot of blue, like blue jets, in the, let's say, a lot of aeroplanes that are clean, producing clean energy. So we do have a lot of, economically, there's a lot of incentives as well because of the new products that are coming into town.
Tanzania, like many other African countries, hugely depend on extraction industry as part of its sources of development. Once again, Dr. Rukonge explains the status of Tanzania as a country in regards to this.
In a country like Tanzania, as much as we are party to the Paris Agreement of 2015, we do submit our nationally determined commitments towards climate change and the efforts we make. But there is a problem because Tanzania is a very huge extractive industry type of country. We have a lot of gold, a lot of coal, we have Tanzanite, we have now there is a lot of companies coming for critical minerals that are raw materials to facilitate the energy transition from fossil fuels to cleaner sources of energy. So I think as a country, we are at a crossroad because we are not a very developed country as much as we're doing better, but we need to balance between attracting investments in fossil fuels as well as being sustainable at the same time, being able to produce clean energy. Now, the thing is, Tanzania is not as industrialized as to create a lot of damage to the atmosphere than most countries in the West. But because we are party to these agreements, we are forced to follow suit of where the world is going because we cannot be the odd man out. So we have a lot of hydroelectric a lot of hydropower in Tanzania, of which that's very clean for the environment. We use a lot of gas in Tanzania, and that's clean for the environment. There is a very huge shift, especially in Tanzanian urban areas like in Mwanza, Arusha, Dar es Salaam, Tanga, etc., Mtwara, Mbeya. There's a lot of, let's say, like cooking. There's a lot of use of LPG, like the gas cylinders, of which that's also very good for the environment. We release less emissions through that. Tanzania also, in Zanzibar, there's a lot of push through the blue economy. There's a big push of the blue economy. The blue economy is very environmental and friendly, climate change friendly. So Tanzania as a country does a lot towards climate change and sustainability. But the issue is we still have a lot of fossil fuels that we need to use and to exploit and to export for our own growth as a country. Because we cannot stop exporting using coal, attend the big mining companies or etc. if they use also the exportation of coal just to be sustainable, because the country also needs to take kids to school. We need to build hospitals, we need to build roads, we need to build infrastructure, and all this requires large amounts of money. So as a country, we are at a crossroad of whether to develop and put more emphasis on the aspects of cleaner energy and sustainability, or concentrate on the exploitation of fossil fuels till a certain amount of time, of which it will be limited. Because you have to understand, even the market for the fossil fuels is closing down. In 10, 20, 30 years, there will not be a market for coal. There will not be a market for other type of minerals that cause more negative impacts to the environment apart from critical minerals. So this is a very important aspect for Tanzania right now.
It is expected that energy transition, like any other shift, comes with some challenges, from mindset shifting to a complete alteration of old ways of energy production. Here's what Dr. Rukonge termed to be as some of the challenges of the transition in Tanzania and Africa at large.
As a country, the biggest challenge is financing. Financing the energy transition is a huge project that I don't believe any sort of developing country would want to undergo. It's easier said than done, because what you have to understand, in essence, the energy transition, what it means, it's a human being taking their neurons, all their veins out, and then putting another set of veins in them. So as a country, you have to change all your energy infrastructure that as it is right now to a cleaner sort of infrastructure. That requires time, money, and workforce. If you leave alone financing, the infrastructure level, energy transition requires smart grids. We don't have a lot of smart grids here, if we have at all. At the country level, that's something that's very difficult. Now, secondly, at the community level, it is something called inclusion. That's why there is something called the just transition. At the community level, if you remember, let's say in Tanzania, I think 5 to 6 or 7 years ago, when we thought we discovered oil and then there was a huge and massive discoveries of gas, a lot of people went towards studying oil and gas. A lot of skills, there was a shift towards that. How do you accommodate that community? How do you accommodate petroleum engineers that have been trained thus far? How do you accommodate, let's say, Geita, a community in Arusha, Mererani, a community in Shinyanga, a community in Mahenge, How do you accommodate these communities? They have been living off fossil extractive industry that creates fossil fuels for so long. So when business closes down and there's closed shop because of the environment, because of the climate, how do you expect these communities to have their livelihood? Because their whole economic ecosystem is wired towards this industry, the extractive industry, in these remote communities. So how do you include these communities into the energy transition? And mind you, we have to include them in a manner that is aligned to national, regional, and global commitments and goals. Leave alone the difference in culture, the difference in political will, the difference in understanding, awareness. So at a community level, that's very difficult. Now, at a local level, from a person to a person, this is something actually very interesting. You see, right now, for example, in Dar es Salaam, there is an increase in European cars. It's because in the West, in the EU and the UK, they do not want to use diesel or petrol cars by 2030. So what they're doing, they're dumping these vehicles to foreigners, foreign markets that would easily accept these vehicles. So at a local level, it's very difficult for a local person to give up a luxurious brand of a car because of the climate and the planet and sustainability.
No matter how challenging it may be for Mother Earth and the future of humans' only habitat, there should be some ways to see the transition through. Once again, here's Dr. Rukonge.
first thing that can be done towards materializing the energy transition in Tanzania is having a very huge wave of awareness, public awareness that is coupled and entangled with political will. And this awareness will create a consciousness, because at the end of the day, battling climate change is not a country thing. It's a personal thing. From choosing not to use plastics as straws, using paper cups than plastic cups, using wooden forks, than plastic forks, So we need that consciousness. That's on a local, on a personal level, because I cannot force somebody, or you cannot force somebody to use, not to use a diesel or petrol car, and all of us to have gas cylinders in our cars, though they're being installed here in Dar es Salaam, just for the purposes of the environment, as well as just because it's cheaper in the climate. So there's that's number one. Then number two is the political will. When we have the political will, when our leaders have the political will, then naturally they will have the right frameworks to create the right policies and regulations to put them in place, so that we can be able to create a climate change strategy, though it is there, but a more detailed and a more exhaustive and explicit climate change strategy that it is tailored to couple our day-to-day activities, to put us through this consciousness. From the awareness comes the consciousness. The consciousness builds the political will. The political will drives the policies. After the policies now, then we attract a certain type of investment. And this investment is tailored towards a cleaner climate. So this investment, for example, when we had policies that said, okay, you should take some of our students to go study about oil, about what? So the same way, we have take a couple of people to go study about, renewable energy, bring in some type of technology that fosters renewable energy technology, teach our people about it. And then again, we have to change the whole curriculum at some point to accommodate this sort of new technology that's coming in.
Despite the overall difficulty in transitioning to renewable energy in the country like Tanzania, there are some few citizens who have started making efforts towards the transitioning. Leonard Kushoka is the director of Kuja na Kushoka Tools Manufacturer, a factory that produces machines for making alternative charcoal located in Tabora, Tanzania. He explains how he came up with the idea, as well as the importance of using alternative charcoal.
Nature yangu mimi nimesomea ufundi.
It is my nature to be innovative. I studied mechanics, but I'm naturally innovative. Ever since I was young, I've been innovating different tools, something which led me to innovate a charcoal briquette machine for producing alternative charcoal. I did not start with inventing the charcoal briquette machine. I had invented a lot of machines before. I saw the challenge at the time and I thought it might be an opportunity. So I invented the charcoal briquette machine towards the end of 2014 and the beginning of 2015 as we were headed for elections. So I started by inventing a tobacco drying machine which uses plants residues. When I was using my expertise in innovation, I realized that apart from getting heat in the rooms where tobacco was being dried, I can use the remaining raw materials to make charcoal, and that is when I started making charcoal.
Kuja na Kushoka Tools Manufacturer, which won an award on alternative charcoal competition in 2018, is also in partnership with the government. Once again, Mr. Kushoka, who is the director, explains some of its responsibilities.
One of the responsibilities we were given by the government, because we are in partnership with the government, was to make sure we spread this technology. And since this technology is an opportunity, when we spread it, we also become economically successful. In the process of taking responsibility, we were able to reach a lot of people. In our database, we have around 200 up to 300 customers who bought our machines. And since this is a new technology, we have to help in installing it to anybody we sell the machines to, as well as educating the society as into how they can produce alternative charcoal.
Elpidius Basil Nyerere is a chairman of Kigelegila Rafiki Mazingira Group, a group based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, that produces alternative charcoal. He explains in brief how the production takes place.
Tunakusanya taka ngumu kutoka kwenye mitaa ya kata Kiwalani.
We collect hard waste from the streets around Kiwalani and other places, especially plants and crop residues such as sawdust, remains of rice dust, coconut shells, peppers, and other type of waste. After we collect them, we bring them around the production area. We conduct preliminary sorting, making sure that we get what we want. Because sometimes the waste might contain what we do not want in making alternative charcoal, such as iron carbon and plastics. After doing the sorting, we take them in a special places for carbonization, making them in a proper condition for producing charcoal. After carbonizing them, we take them from carbonizer furnace in the factory area where we mix them with other materials for the production of charcoal.
Baada ya kuzikarbonize, tunazihamisha kutoka kwenye vile vinu vya carbonize, tunazielekeza eneo la kiwanda, na zikifika kiwandani tunakwenda sasa kuziunganisha na vitendea kazi vingine kwa ajili ya utengenezaji wa mkaa.
Martha George, a Dar es Salaam resident, is one of the few Tanzanians who have embarked in the renewable energy transition journey. She explains how it is so far. I am grateful ever since I've heard about alternative charcoal. I went to look at it. At first, I ignored it, but then I bought it and used it for cooking. When I used it, I saw the difference from the other type of charcoal. First of all, it is budget friendly because they sell 1 kilogram for 500 Tanzanian shillings. So if you buy for 1,000 shillings, you'll be able to use it to cook all the meals of the day and still use it tomorrow. So, to say the truth, I have personally liked this charcoal, and it is very budget friendly and it does not burn easily. You might cook all your meals without adding any more charcoal, and you might use the remaining ash to cook another meal and boil water for showering. Once again, we have come to the end of another episode of Let's Talk Climate series. Stay close as we continue exploring the best ways we can deal with the effects of climate change. I am Evalilian Masawe. See you in the next episode.